The first refusal, the chamber of the Galaxy Council, was larger than any human city hall. Its ceiling stretched like a sky of silver glass, glowing with stars carved by alien architects long before humans learned fire. Voices of 100 species filled the air, each language layered over another, translated by machines that hummed quietly beneath every seat. Today was no ordinary gathering. It was supposed to be the day humanity bent its head and agreed to peace. For months, rumors had spread that humans were finally ready to sign the treaties. Entire sectors of the galaxy had paused their conflicts, waiting for this moment. The hall was alive with hope. Aliens who had fought for centuries whispered that the nightmare of war was about to end. They believed the humans, the youngest race to join the stars, would finally accept the laws of the Council and end the fear that surrounded them. At the center of the chamber stood a raised circle where representatives spoke. One by one, leaders of other races stepped forward. The ceruleans, with their glassy blue skin, spoke of peace as a necessity. The Targ, towering and armored, grunted that without treaties there could be only chaos. Even the cautious and secretive Valari came forward, their thin bodies trembling with nervousness. They all agreed on one thing: humanity must accept. The eyes of the chamber turned toward the single human representative. He was dressed in a black uniform with no symbols, no crest of power, nothing to show status. His face was calm, unreadable, almost too still compared to the restless movement of other beings. When he stood, the chamber quieted. Every translation machine went silent, waiting for his words. This was the moment history would change. The human voice cut through the silence. It was steady, almost cold. "We refuse." The words struck like a thunderclap. For one long breath, no one moved. Even the air felt heavy, as if the chamber itself was struggling to understand. Then whispers began, growing into gasps, then into angry voices layered in dozens of languages. Machines struggled to keep up with the storm of words. What do they mean? They cannot refuse. They have no choice, but the human stood still. He did not explain. He did not argue. He only repeated the same words. We refuse. Shock turned to fear. The Council had seen humans fight. They had seen the way humans pushed through battles with a will that frightened even the strongest species. They were supposed to be desperate now, weakened after endless wars, but instead of begging for peace, they were walking away from it. The question spread like fire. Why? The ceruleans demanded an answer. Do you seek endless conflict? The Targ slammed fists into the floor, their voices booming. If not peace, then war. The Valari whispered to one another, their eyes darting toward the human as if looking at a predator. But the human did not respond. His silence was heavier than threats. His refusal was more dangerous than a declaration of war. Because no one could read it. Was this arrogance? Or was it something worse? Did humans know a secret that the rest of the galaxy did not? In the galleries above, alien citizens who had been invited to watch grew restless. Some shouted in anger. Others demanded their leaders protect them. Everyone felt the same unease. If humanity refused peace, what future was left? The head of the council, an ancient being whose body shimmered with light, finally rose. Its voice filled every corner of the chamber. Humanity, you must understand the weight of your choice. The treaties are the shield that prevents the galaxy from tearing itself apart. Refuse them and you threaten us all. For the first time, the human's expression changed. A faint smile, small and almost invisible, touched his face. It was not a smile of joy or kindness. It was a smile of certainty. He bowed his head slightly, then spoke only once more. We refuse. Chaos erupted. The chamber shook with arguments, threats, and shouts. Species that had stood united now screamed at one another. Some demanded the council expel humanity immediately. Others feared that such an act would trigger war. The translation machines broke under the noise, spilling fragments of words into the air. Danger! Secret weapons! They know! We are not safe! But the human simply turned and walked out of the circle, his steps slow, deliberate, echoing against the polished floor. Every eye followed him until the great doors closed behind him, leaving the council drowning in their own panic. In the silence that followed, a truth began to creep into every mind. Humanity had not come to seek peace. Humanity had come to deliver a message, and that message was rejection. Across the galaxy, news spread faster than light. Worlds that had waited for safety instead received fear. Merchants halted their trade. Soldiers sharpened their blades. Families looked to the stars and whispered, What are the humans planning? No answer came, only silence. A silence that carried more terror than 1,000 declarations of war. And so the first refusal of humanity became the spark that lit the fuse. The Council had expected peace, but what they received was uncertainty, suspicion, and the first cracks in the unity of the stars. Because when humans said no, they said it with finality. And in that refusal, the galaxy heard the sound of storms approaching. Whispers of fear, the silence of humanity's refusal did not end in the chamber. It followed every delegate back to their ships. It lingered in the air like smoke, and it spread across the stars with the weight of rumor. Within days, entire sectors of the galaxy were whispering the same question. Why would humans refuse every treaty? On the Valari homeworld, markets emptied as merchants pulled down their stalls. They claimed they feared human fleets would appear without warning. In the great libraries of the Ceruleans, scholars debated late into the night, their voices trembling as they asked whether humans had uncovered a truth that others were too blind to see. Among the Targ, war drums began to echo, not as a call to battle but as a reminder of strength, as if their people needed to believe they could still stand against humanity if war returned. The council chambers, once a place of order, became a nest of unease. Delegates who once spoke of peace now whispered in corners, avoiding the center stage. Eyes darted from one species to another, searching for answers. No one had them. What humanity had done was not just a rejection of peace. It was a rejection of understanding. It left a void, and the galaxy feared what might crawl out of it. Stories began to spread like disease. Some claimed humanity had discovered a new form of weapon, one that could destroy planets in a single strike. Others said humans had built ships larger than moons, waiting beyond council borders. A darker rumor whispered that humans had no need for treaties because they had already made alliances with powers that the council dared not name. In truth, none of it was confirmed. But the lack of answers only fed the fire. Fear did not need proof, it only needed silence. And silence was all humanity gave. Across alien worlds, people began to act on that fear. Trade routes that once carried goods across sectors suddenly closed. Patrol ships lined their borders, watching the void nervously. Entire colonies near human space demanded evacuation, claiming they would not wait for war to find them. Back in the council chamber, tempers began to flare. Delegates accused one another of weakness. "You trust the humans too much," one snarled. "You provoke them with your fear," another snapped. Old grudges that treaties had hidden for years now broke through the surface. What humans had done with 2 words, "we refuse," was undo centuries of fragile peace. The Ceruleans, who had always been the voice of logic, called for patience. Their leader stood tall, his glass-like skin reflecting the chamber's light, and said, "Humanity acts with purpose. They do not move without reason. We must discover that reason before we act." But his calm words did not soothe the others. The Targ slammed fists into their desks, their armored voices shaking the floor. "Humans act with purpose, yes, and that purpose is war. They spit on our treaties because they have already chosen conquest." The Valari, fragile and cautious, whispered in their corner, their voices like wind through thin reeds. Or perhaps they know the end is coming. Perhaps they see something we do not. Perhaps they refuse because treaties mean nothing in the face of what approaches. The chamber fell into heavy silence at those words. The idea that humans might not be preparing for war, but instead bracing for something even greater, sent a chill across the hall. If it was true, then humanity had seen a storm no one else could see. And by refusing peace, perhaps they were not defying the council. Perhaps they were warning it. That thought took root. It spread faster than any command, faster than any order. On distant worlds, citizens repeated it in hushed voices. "The humans know. The humans have seen." Some feared it meant invasion. Others feared it meant extinction. Meanwhile, human ships traveled the stars in silence. They did not attack. They did not explain. They only moved with quiet precision, carrying their unreadable purpose through the void. Alien eyes watched them with suspicion, but they saw nothing unusual. That only made it worse. The absence of action was more terrifying than open threat. In time, the whispers of fear grew into arguments, and arguments into open unrest. On one council world, crowds filled the streets demanding that leaders build new fleets to defend against humanity. On another, riots erupted when citizens learned their leaders still traded with human merchants. Trust in the council began to crack, and those cracks spread like fractures in glass. Within the great chamber, the head of the council summoned the delegates again. Its body shimmered like light across water, but even its glow seemed dimmer than before. "We cannot allow fear to rule us," it said. "We must face humanity directly. We must demand their reason." But many in the chamber no longer believed humanity would answer. Some argued for sanctions. Others whispered of preemptive strikes. A few even suggested breaking away from the council entirely, forming secret alliances against the humans. Through it all, one truth remained. Humanity had not spoken since that day. Their silence had become the loudest voice in the galaxy, and that silence was tearing the council apart. The delegates left the chamber with heavy hearts. Some walked with anger, some with fear, and some with secret plans hidden behind calm faces. But all of them carried the same question in their minds. Why had humanity refused? No answer came. Only whispers that grew darker with every passing day. The hidden truth, the second meeting of the Galaxy Council was called sooner than expected. Fear had already spread across the stars, and the Council believed only one thing could calm it: answers. Delegates gathered again in the Grand Chamber, their faces heavy with tension. The silver ceiling above seemed darker, as if even the light had grown tired. When the human ambassador entered, silence swallowed the hall. Every being turned, hoping at last humanity would explain. But his calm steps and unreadable face gave nothing away. He walked to the center and stood still, hands behind his back, waiting. The head of the council spoke first, its voice echoing with authority. "Humanity, the galaxy waits. You refuse every treaty, you reject every pact. The council must know why. Your silence endangers us all." For a moment, it seemed the human would answer. His eyes lifted, scanning the chamber. Delegates leaned forward, hearts tight, translators ready. But his voice was short, the same as before. "We refuse." Chaos threatened to return, but this time the council held itself together. Demands filled the air. The Ceruleans begged for logic. The Targ roared for clarity. Even the soft Valari pressed for reason. But the human only stood, expression calm, silence louder than all voices. Then, in a quiet corner of the chamber, an unexpected voice rose. A small alien, unnoticed by many, stepped forward. It was a scholar of the Mirren, a race known for keeping records of every council session. His body was frail, his voice weak, but his words cut deep. "I have seen the movements of human fleets," he said. "They no longer circle their own space. They move outward, quiet, steady, always beyond the council's eyes. I believe they are not refusing because they want war. I believe they refuse because they do not need us anymore." Gasps filled the chamber. His words spread like fire. The Ceruleans demanded proof. The Targ shouted it was lies, but the Mirren continued, his eyes fixed on the human. "Treaties are chains to bind us together. Humans reject them because they walk paths we cannot see. Their silence is not weakness. It is confidence. They have already chosen their future, and it does not include the council." Every delegate turned to the human, searching for denial, for some sign he would dismiss the claim. But he did not. He stood still, his silence again the only answer. That silence became confirmation in the minds of many. From that day, rumors changed. It was no longer only about weapons or hidden fleets. Now whispers claimed humanity had already found something greater. Some said they had discovered new stars beyond mapped space. Others claimed they had met powers older than the council itself. A few even believed they had uncovered truths about the galaxy's end. And with every rumor, fear deepened. Because if humanity no longer needed treaties, if they no longer needed the council, then nothing stopped them from rising alone, stronger and untouchable. In the days that followed, the chamber became divided. Some argued humanity must be confronted, forced to explain or expelled from the council entirely. Others warned such action would trigger the very war everyone feared. The Velari suggested quiet observation, to watch the humans from the shadows. The Targ pushed for preparation of fleets, believing open strength was the only shield. The Ceruleans, torn between logic and dread, called again for patience. Yet patience was running out. Across alien worlds, whispers turned into unrest. Crowds demanded leaders reveal what humans were hiding. Soldiers drilled in secret bases, their commanders unwilling to be caught unprepared. Merchants raised their prices, claiming trade with humans had become too dangerous. The galaxy trembled not from war itself, but from the shadow of what might come. Meanwhile, humanity remained silent. Their ships moved, but not in aggression. They did not threaten, they did not demand, they did not explain. They simply carried on, as if the galaxy's chaos was of no concern to them. That indifference was more frightening than any weapon. Inside the council, a final attempt was made. A group of delegates approached the human ambassador privately, away from the chamber's eyes. They begged for reason, pleaded for explanation. "Why do you refuse? What is it you see that we cannot?" The human's eyes studied them one by one. Then he spoke softly, almost kindly. "You do not need to know." And with those 5 words he turned away, leaving them in silence. When the story reached the wider council, panic grew worse. Humanity's refusal was no longer simple defiance. It was now a wall, solid, cold, and unbreakable. The galaxy could only guess what lay on the other side. As days turned into weeks, it became clear. Humanity had become the center of every thought, every fear, every plan, and yet humanity itself offered nothing but silence. That silence was the hidden truth. It was a truth no one could touch, no one could challenge, and no one could escape. And the galaxy, in its fear, began to tear itself apart trying to answer it. Council in chaos, the Galaxy Council Chamber, once a monument of order, had become a battlefield of voices. Every session turned into arguments, and every argument pushed the council closer to collapse. Delegates no longer entered with calm faces. They came with suspicion in their eyes, anger in their voices, and fear heavy in their hearts. Humanity's silence had become the storm that shook their unity. The ceruleans tried to keep reason alive. Their leader stood tall, skin reflecting faint light, and called for calm. "We must not let fear break us. We must search for truth before we act." But his words fell into the noise like stones into a raging sea. The Targ pounded fists into the floor, shouting that patience was weakness. "Every day we wait, humans grow stronger. If we do not strike first, we will fall." The Valari trembled, their thin bodies almost folding under pressure. They spoke in whispers, but their words carried far. If humanity refuses peace, then they must have already chosen war. Or worse, perhaps they have seen something none of us are ready to face. These whispers spread through the chamber, infecting every mind. Delegates accused one another of hiding secret alliances. Old grudges between races flared again. Even allies began to doubt each other, believing someone must already be working with humanity in secret. Trust collapsed piece by piece, replaced by paranoia. Beyond the chamber walls, unrest spilled into the galaxy. On council worlds, citizens marched through the streets demanding their leaders build new fleets. Panic markets began, with people hoarding supplies as if war had already started. Soldiers were stationed at borders, their ships shadowing human space with nervous energy. Every movement of a human vessel sent alerts through dozens of systems, and yet humanity remained quiet. Their ships did not attack. Their ambassadors did not explain. They moved with calm certainty, as if the galaxy's panic did not exist. That calmness was more terrifying than open aggression. To many, it looked like a predator watching prey exhaust itself before the strike. Inside the council chamber, the breaking point came. Delegates shouted over one another, their voices raw. The Targ demanded immediate war preparations. "If we wait, we die," their leader growled, armored fists echoing against the floor. The ceruleans shouted back, warning that war without proof would doom them all. The Valari begged for caution, their whispers drowned by the roars of others. The head of the council, once a symbol of unity, struggled to control the chaos. Its voice, shimmering with light, cried out, "Silence! This chamber is not a place of war." But no one listened. The chamber shook with rage, a storm of voices breaking every rule the council had stood for. At last, one delegate shouted what many already thought. "Perhaps the council no longer matters. Perhaps it is time we protect our people alone." The words hung heavy in the air. Delegates exchanged glances, and in their silence the truth was clear. The unity of the council was dying. That night, secret meetings took place across the stars. Some races began forming quiet pacts, promising to stand together against humanity. Others withdrew fleets from council control, keeping their strength for themselves. A few reached out in hidden messages, seeking contact with human officials, hoping to learn their secret in exchange for loyalty. The council, once the heart of order, was now bleeding from within. The great chamber no longer felt like a shield. It felt like a cage where fear devoured them all. Among alien citizens, paranoia spread deeper. Families whispered that their neighbors might be spies. Merchants refused to trade with anyone suspected of favoring humans. Riots erupted on border worlds, where people demanded evacuation before the inevitable war came. The galaxy was collapsing under its own fear, and humanity had not fired a single shot. The Ceruleans tried again to call for calm, but even their allies doubted them. "You are blind," others said. "You wish for patience while humans prepare their blades." The Targ grew restless, their fleets already gathering in secret. The Valari withdrew into silence, their whispers no longer reaching the chamber. The head of the council looked upon the chaos and saw what no one wanted to admit. The council was no longer leading. It was breaking. Humanity's silence had shattered their trust more deeply than war ever could. As the session ended, delegates left without speaking to one another. Some carried plans for alliances, others for betrayal, others for war. The chamber, once filled with the light of unity, now echoed with the shadows of fear. And in the distance, human ships moved silently through the void, steady and calm. To some, they looked like hunters. To others, like explorers. To all, they were the center of dread. The council was spiraling into chaos. Humanity had spoken only 2 words: "We refuse," and the galaxy was tearing itself apart. Humanity's silence, the final gathering of the Galaxy Council, was unlike any before it. The chamber was crowded, voices sharp, and tempers already close to breaking. Delegates no longer carried the calm faces of leaders. They carried the restless eyes of survivors who feared tomorrow. The weight of humanity's refusal had pressed upon them for weeks, and now the galaxy was collapsing under the silence. The head of the council rose, its luminous body flickering as if even its light had grown unsteady. "We summon humanity one last time," it said. "They must speak or we decide their fate." Its voice trembled, though it tried to hide it. Everyone knew this was the last chance for order. When the human ambassador entered, the chamber froze. His steps were slow, steady, the sound of boots echoing across the polished floor. He took his place at the center as if nothing had changed. Around him, hundreds of alien eyes stared, some with anger, some with fear, some with desperate hope. The Ceruleans spoke first, their voice almost pleading. "Humanity, the galaxy is breaking apart. Trade has stopped, borders have closed, fleets prepare for war. You can end this. All you must do is sign. Give us peace." The human did not respond. His silence stretched, heavy and sharp. The Targ rose next, armored body towering. "Do you seek to conquer us all? Do you want blood instead of peace? Speak, or we will treat your silence as war." Their roar echoed, shaking the chamber. Still the human said nothing. Then the Valari, fragile and fearful, whispered what others had only imagined. "Or perhaps you refuse because you know something greater is coming. Something none of us can stop. If so, then you doom us by silence." Their words made the chamber fall quiet because deep down, many feared it was true. The head of the council leaned forward, voice sharp with desperation. "Humanity, answer us. Why do you refuse every treaty? Why do you stand apart while the galaxy falls into chaos?" For a long moment, the human ambassador seemed still as stone. Then at last he moved. He raised his eyes, scanning every corner of the chamber. His expression remained calm, cold, unreadable. And then, with a voice as steady as the first day, he spoke only once. "We refuse." The words fell like a final blow. Delegates erupted in panic. Some shouted threats, some begged for reason, some broke into tears of rage and fear. The translation machines filled the chamber with overlapping cries. "They doom us. They prepare war. They know something. They leave us to die." But the human ambassador did not stay to listen. He turned, his boots echoing against the floor, and walked toward the great doors. No guard stopped him. No one dared. He left the chamber with the same calm steps, the same steady silence. The doors closed behind him, sealing the council in their chaos. In that silence, the galaxy changed forever. Delegates shouted over one another, trust shattered beyond repair. Some races swore they would never return to the chamber. Others threatened to abandon the council entirely. Secret alliances were no longer whispered, they were declared in anger. The chamber that once held unity now held only fragments of fear. Beyond those walls, the galaxy burned with paranoia. Fleets armed themselves, worlds locked their skies. Citizens whispered in fear of the humans who walked away from peace. Rumors grew darker, that humans had seen the fall of the galaxy, that they carried knowledge of something vast, something unstoppable, Others believed humans would strike when the galaxy was weakest, and that refusal was their warning before conquest. Yet no attack came. No fleet crossed borders. No declaration of war was made. Humanity remained silent, moving only with calm certainty, as if the rest of the galaxy did not matter. That silence became the sharpest weapon. It cut deeper than any blade. It broke alliances. It destroyed trust. The Council had wanted an answer. What they received was nothing. And in that nothing, they heard what terrified them most. Humanity did not need them. Humanity had chosen its own path, beyond treaties, beyond unity, beyond fear. The galaxy spiraled into chaos not because of war, but because of silence. And so the story of the Council's fall began with only 2 words. We refuse.